Hi guys, how's everyone doing? I wanted to take a minute and just do a kind of a boring video for a lot of people, but not people that are into brewing. So about yeast, and this is probably aimed more towards new people that are into brewing, but even some old timers can learn some things. So I've been doing a lot of studying over the last few months, reading very long, boring articles and watching a lot of podcasts and with brewers, people that work in mead breweries and just distilleries, that kind of thing, and just what they know about yeast and people that have degrees in yeast. But I feel like I have a pretty good handle on it for the hobbyist thing. If you want to kind of take it to another step. So let's go over what I got laid out on the table and just different kinds of yeast. Let's see, there's the Red Star. Sorry, I got some notes because there's a lot of information. Shoot. There's a Red Star Classique, and it wants to be in about 59 to 86 degrees, and it has a 13% alcohol tolerance, ABV, we could say. And then Red Star Cuvée, 45 to 95 degrees, has 18%. There's Lablin B47. Oh, well, let me just go back. I was trying to make this super quick, but there's a lot of information. Let's just take our time and go over it. This is a wine yeast, and I use it in cider, and I haven't used it in a mead yet, but probably will one of these days. This is a champagne yeast, and it ferments to 18% ABV, so it gets, it really kind of rips through things. And it seems like the less ABV that they have, tolerance, the more flavors you're going to keep. This is going to leave you with less flavor. And then we have things called fluctuation rate, which means most of the wine yeast have a high fluctuation rate, like a flock of birds. The yeast flock together at the end of the fermentation and kind of drop to the bottom of the wort or must or wash, depending on what you're brewing. It's all the same stuff, different names. Like this distiller's yeast, it doesn't flocculate so well. But then we have the D47 Lablin. It has a 14% ABV, and it likes to ferment 59 to 86. And the 71B, it likes to ferment 59 to 89, and it has a 14% ABV. And these two are kind of more for, this can go in anything really, cider, but it kind of likes red stuff, red wines or darker meads. If you mix some cherry juice into your cider or something, that might be a little more suited. 71B, same kind of thing. And KD116, that's another champagne yeast. It ferments 59 to 86 and down to 18%. Safel S04, that one likes 59 to 86 degrees. It's a pale ale yeast, and I use that in cider and as well as meads. And it has a 9 to 11% ABV. And a two nation all of a sudden I can't pronounce shit, of 72 to 80%. And what that means is, since this one has a lower ABV, it'll probably at max go up to about ferment 82% of the sugars of your ABV, of the amount of sugar that you have in your must or wash or wort. And probably a minimum of about 72%. And then the US Sapphire US 05, it likes 78 to 82, and it has a 9 to 11. And same kind of attenuation rate. There, I pronounced it right. Then there's Daddy Yeast. That's for distilling sour mash in some beers. It can go up to 22%, believe it or not. This is a Red Star Daddy Yeast. There's a couple different brands. Let's see, it likes to ferment like below 90, from about 77 to 90. Let's see. Oh, and then we have bread yeast, Flashman's bread yeast, and it'll get you usually to around 13%, and it could definitely go more. All these can go more, and we'll get on that in a minute. And it likes, it's kind of hard to find some exact information on that because it's not made for fermenting. It's made for making bread, but it works. And it likes from about 77 to 85 degrees. And why so many, you think? Well, it's not a must for sure. But each kind of yeast, as you've seen, has different characteristics and does different things. And will ferment lower or less. You can make sweeter things. So if you want to just put more sugar in something with a lower ABV yeast, and then it'll ferment out and still leave some sweet in that, you don't have to worry about back sweetening or starting fermentation again for bottle storing, having bottle bombs, that kind of stuff. So that's another reason to do it. And they just all have a different flavor. This Classique, me personally, I don't like it that much until it's been aged out. But my girlfriend loves using that yeast for her stuff. So it's just taste. It's all taste. And like I said, different ones are better suited for darker or lighter fermentations, fruits or whatever, for the wine yeast. And that's totally a preference as well. I mean, there's no must in any of this stuff. Must, yes, there's a lot of must because that's the base for wine, right? There's no set rules for any of this stuff. You can use bread yeast to make wine, or to make whiskey, rum. I've got this to make rum with it, as a matter of fact, because it's supposed to, and they like I said, they all impart their own types of flavors into them, and or get rid of flavors, or they're coming up with specialty yeast now that make it taste like bananas or strawberries if you ferment at a high temperature. But let's not go completely off track. And the Daddy yeast, like I said, it gets up to 22%, but you're going to need a lot of sugar, a lot of nutrients. You would probably, I've got them pretty high up in that range, and I had to step feed. So, and you can go a little beyond that as well. Some people will tell you you can't, but you really can. But it takes a lot of effort, and at our level, a little luck that you do everything just right. And but the drawback to that is, okay, it sounds cool. I got a 22% ABV wash, so I'm gonna get a lot of alcohol return. But alcohol made with just sugar isn't that good. It doesn't taste good. Or we would just make sugar wine and drink that and everybody'd be happy, but it just doesn't taste well. And then when you distill it, it doesn't taste well either. You can filter it and do things to hide it, but it's not as good as if you make a good quality grain liquor. Maybe use a little bit of sugar to bump up your ABV, and that's the way I do it. So I generally keep my mashes at about 12%. So that's just my preference. And now, okay, let's get off of that and get into how to start your yeast. You can just dry pitch it. A lot of people do that. Nothing wrong with it. It's not the way I like to do it. I like to make either a starter. So I have one of those little magnetic stir plates, and I put some in a beaker with some water or wort or must or fruit juice, whatever. Spin it for a couple days. Then that allows the yeast to get growing really well in that and acclimatize it to where it's going to be living. and I add in, you can use some Go Firm, which I don't have any. I got some in the mail, I ran out. Or you can use Fermento and just put a tiny bit in. So that's how you make a starter. Or you can just hydrate it, just add it to some water, or say, like a lot of these, especially these Lavlins, they recommend to hydrate them at 104 degrees. And don't do that unless you're sure you can keep that right temperature, because big temperature spikes, going over too much can kill it. Big temperature spikes can stress it. So you need to be able to do it right if you're going to do that. But you could still, from like say 100 isn't that hot, and that's kind of like when you make a baby bottle, it's just a little warm on your wrist. 100's a little bit warmer than we are. And so you put your yeast in and some water, you let it start to grow. You start adding some of whatever you're going to ferment it in, a little bit at a time, say a tablespoon at a time. Let it keep growing. Put in a touch of like the Go Firm Protect, or just a little sprinkle of Fermento. I can't even tell you how much. Just, they don't really tell you to do it that way, but I've done it and it works well. And just a little bit, like you dip your spoon in it and smack it on the edge of the container, and that's all you need. Because you only put like a 1.5 teaspoons of Fermento per 5 gallons. So you see, you don't need very much. And because when you're hydrating your yeast, when they're forming, they're reproducing and they're populating whatever they're going to ferment, and it's a asexual reproduction. So the cells split. One makes two makes four, and they just keep multiplying. And these packages have, like, I believe it's like 1 billion cells in it. I could be wrong, but I think that's, if I remember that right. So you can see that's going to build up pretty quickly. And as that happens, you want to give them the right stuff. You want to feed them. They're just like us. They need to eat. And which will get me, now I can get into these nutrients. Here, this one's an yeast energizer, and it has vitamins, amino acids. It has a little DAP, which is this, diammonium phosphate with urea in it. There's Fermax, Fermento. Like I said, I have a little Go Firm Protect, which is just for hydrating your yeast. I wish I would have waited until I got that to show you that, but you can remember that. So you add those things according to the directions, and they let your yeast develop strongly. You get a good healthy yeast, because they're like, actually, if your fermentation, if you add something to it and it like foams all over the place, that doesn't mean happy yeast. That can actually mean stressed yeast. And just sugar, like if you're doing a mead, you really should add nutrients, because there's nothing. They need nitrogen. They need, like I said, the fatty acids, the B vitamins. They need that stuff, and which is in a lot of things like fruit and grains. But in honey or sugar wash, there's none of that present. So you end up with stuck fermentations. You end up with sulfur smells, because you stress the yeast out. And let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, here's something I wanted to show you. It's kind of controversial. A few years back, they were talking about olive oil could maybe replace oxygen, and because the yeast need oxygen to get started. But there's a lot of fatty acids and stuff in olive oil that the yeast need. It turned out it wasn't any better to just use that, but you can use it, and it will help your fermentation. And the way you use that is you would put a drop of the highest alcohol you got. For me, it's 190, and a drop of olive oil that mix together. Then you dip a paper clip into that, and then you touch that paper clip to a paper towel to get the biggest bulk of that drop off the end, and you dip that into your 5-gallon bucket. That's how much of that you need. So hardly none. And it's like 0.00000.5% of drop is what you need. And that's the best way I can tell you to explain you how to get close to what you need, which is probably still a little too much, but it's not going to hurt it. But you don't want to get too much in there. You don't want oil in your mash or wash, or a ton of it anyway. A speck isn't going to hurt, obviously. And let's see. So why do you do all this when you can just dry pitch it and it works? Because you don't want stressed yeast. You don't want that sulfur smell. You don't want off flavors. And this gives your yeast the best chance to work the best for you. And then things like we were reading about temperatures and ABV, you can easily surpass ABVs and get them to ferment down to a lot lower ABV if you take care of your yeast ahead of time. Let's see, and you can ferment it at higher temperatures as well, or maybe a little lower. I don't usually go. I'm in Southern California, and I try not to run the AC or the heater. It offsets the cost of living a little, right? So we generally 68 is about as cold as it gets inside the house, so no big deal. But that's as close as cold as I'm going to ferment, which is usually within any tolerance of any yeast. But so there's a reason to do that. And then let's see the yeast nutrients. Like a lot of these have DAP in it, and you really don't want to use DAP when the yeast are forming. It burns the cell walls. It definitely makes stressed yeast. Everyone suggests now to get like a Go Firm Protect or the Fermato, which has organic nitrogen in it, and that's what the yeast really need the most. Let's see, you can if you don't have, maybe you're in some place that this stuff isn't available, a different country or something, you can take and boil some yeast to make sure they're dead, and that's nutrients, and maybe add olive oils everywhere. Do the little olive oil diluted in the highest proof of alcohol, just a pin drop. There's a little something you could do that would help a bunch. So there's always ways to go about things that when you don't have in America we have everything available to us, but some countries they don't. Let's see. What's more? Oh, another thing is when you're starting is pH. So like wine yeast, like a little lower pH, around the 4.2 range. Mashes, worts, and stuff, they like maybe up to around a 5.0, but anything between 4.2 and 5 is good. And the way that works is the higher the number, the more base it's getting to be. So I think on the scale it's 15 is the highest. I could be wrong. I can never remember all that information, but it's somewhere in there. That would be lye. And 0 would be like hydrochloric acid. Like a lemon would be a 3, I think. So you just get the little pH strips, dip them in your bucket, or you can get an electronic pH reader. That works as well. I had one, but it was a cheap one, and it got condensation inside of it and didn't work right. I threw it away, and until I use up all my test strips, I'm not going to decide what I'm going to buy another one or just keep using test strips. But you just dip the test strips in, you match the pH on the little back of the bottle. I don't know if y'all have seen them. Let's see, I have a bottle. That's not it. I don't know what I did with my pH strips, but here's one. You test water hardness, so it's the same thing. You get this stuff at the pet store, off Amazon, whatever. So You see it's got a strip of little collars. You dip it in the thing. You match which collar stands out the most to whatever's on here, and it tells you what your pH level is. And if you're higher than 5, you can put a little calcium carbonate in it, and you just add a little bit at a time, like a half a teaspoon at a time to your 5-gallon bucket, maybe even a quarter if you're just a little bit off and you want to bring it down close. And you stir it in, you test it again. And then if you are, actually I told you that wrong. Let's say that you were at a 3. You would put the calcium carbonate in it. And if you were at a 7, you would put citric acid in it to bring it back down to a more acidic level. And you could just use a lemon, that works as well. Citric acid, same thing. Another way to get it right. And let's see. So doing all those things, some people aren't going to do that. That's a lot to do and keep track of and remember and learn about. I totally nerd out on this stuff and love doing it. Trying different things, different yeast, different methods, different nutrients, what does what, and to me it's really neat. So I enjoy doing it, but you definitely don't have to. But if you do, it will help you get a better end result, in my opinion. A lot of people will tell you don't use bread yeast to make wine; it doesn't work, or mead, but it makes shitty flavors. Well, that's not true. If you take care of it, it'll work very well for you. And so, but that's also my opinion, and that's their opinions. And for them, I'm sure that maybe they haven't experienced that. To them, that's what it is. So they're not going to try it again or do anything different because it didn't work once. And especially if you made a mead and you just committed $15 worth of honey, you know, that sucks. And you got to wait 3 years for it to taste good because it got some stressed yeast in it. So that's another thing. Your wines and your meads can be ready faster if you don't stress your yeast out while it's making. Now that's not 100% true about everything, because some things just need age. The alcohol mellows with age and different things, and that works the same as with whiskey. A fresh distilled whiskey has definitely got an alcohol bite compared to one that's been aged for months or years. And that doesn't matter if it sits in a jar or a barrel. That just happens with alcohol. Let's see. I think I've kind of covered about everything. That wasn't too tall. Shoot, it was 23 minutes. I guess that is a long video. Well, probably most of y'all won't make it to the end, but if you have any questions about yeast, feel free to drop me a line in the comments or shoot me an email. If it's too involved, you can shoot me an email and I'll it's in my about part of my thing. I don't mind communicating with people via email about this kind of stuff. And happy distilling, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And lots of love. Bye.